The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish one, when taking their lamps, brought no oil with them, but the wise brought flasks of oil with their lamps. Since the bridegroom was long delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight there was a cry, "Behold the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise ones replied, "No, for there may not be enough for us and you. Go instead to the merchants and buy some for yourselves." While they went off to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went into the wedding feast with him. Then the door was locked. Afterwards the other virgins came and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he said in reply, "Amen, I say to you, I do not know you. Therefore, stay awake, for you know neither the day nor the hour." The Gospel of the Lord. Friends, today in our Gospel, Jesus seems to be speaking pretty plainly, pretty bluntly. He's not only encouraging us, but I think demanding that we remain vigilant, always prepared. Now, that's kind of interesting, though, because throughout all of these readings, from Wisdom, from Thessalonians, even in our Psalm, we are being encouraged to do something, to always seek wisdom, and to grieve differently than those who have no hope. And yet, in Jesus' parable, when the people who are unprepared actually do something about it and go buy their lamp oil from the merchants, well, they miss out. That seems to be their downfall. Seems like they were trying to do the right thing, going out and addressing a deficiency that they had. Wouldn't it be nice if more people were willing to act on their mistake, a lot like these virgins? But I think if we're truly to understand this parable, we have to keep in mind that we are not, in fact, the cause of our own salvation. It sounds kind of silly and a basic thing that we probably learned when we were a kid, but I think you'd be surprised at how alive and well the Pelagians truly are. I think at some level we all really want to believe that if we just try hard enough or do the right things, then in the end our score sheet will be just good enough for us to be led into the kingdom. I hate to say it, but there is no score sheet. There is one victory, the cross. And do you know how many people that victory won? As our first reading said, all who seek. Not just some, not just the really good ones who seem to be perfect in all they do and say, but all who seek. That's an interesting way to put that. To go back to our friends from the Gospel, it's worth noting that both groups of virgins did in fact prepare for their journey. The foolish ones didn't bring any oil with them. They did not plan for a journey in the darkness. And I tell you what, I can really relate to that. I don't think any of us want to walk in the dark, whether it be actual darkness or a spiritual one. It's scary out there. Anything can happen. Surely anything important will happen in the safety of daylight. Perhaps the foolish virgins thought that same thing. Surely the bridegroom will not come when it's scary and dark and we're all tired from a long journey. Surely not. There's clearly no reason to bring any oil. That'll just slow us down after all. And it seems to imply that there are merchants nearby, so even if they do end up needing their oil, they can just go buy some. Clearly a win-win situation. Well, not so much. Okay, before I move on, I have to be careful because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. St. Paul, in our second reading, says this a couple of times throughout his letters, and it's pretty awesome every time he does it. He talks about hope in such an incredible way, and I can't help but think that this is truly at the heart of our Christian message. Think about that first line from Thessalonians. We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, about those who have fallen asleep, so that you may not grieve like the rest, who have no hope. First of all, we must be aware. Second of all, we will grieve. That's a part of our lives. But we must do so in a way in which there is hope. Remember the cross. I think too often in our own lives we're more like those foolish virgins than we'd like to believe. Or like one of my favorite memes of that dog, his house is burning down around him, and he simply says, well, this is fine. We've convinced ourselves that things are fine. And if they're not, we just have to pretend that they are. That's what it means to be religious, right? This religion thing is all about feeling good. Well, again, not so much. Imagine if we took as much action and preparation in our faith lives as we did this past week in our civic duties. Record-breaking voter turnouts on all sides. People were passionate about their particular candidate, and they were out there trying to act for change. What would our faith, our church, look like if we took the same amount of care and concern? I dare say we might see that we are more like St. Paul than we have realized. We have the examples of the saints before us. We know what Jesus told us to do. We just have to do it. We're also aware of those people who perhaps didn't lead such a noble life, those who have hurt us, or those who have hurt others. We need to remember them too, as St. Paul tells us. Christianity, again, does not ignore the pain and the hurt of loss. Jesus, however, changes our sorrow into joy. That's the conversion experience we're all after. That's the victory the cross won for us. There are many things in this world to feel frustrated and angry with. There are many times when grief is the only thing that we can seem to muster, but we have to have hope. We have to trust that it does not all end in nothingness, that the pain and the suffering Christ went through that we go through is worth it. That suffering on the cross did what he said it was going to do. But that's one of those things that I find is a lot easier said than done. It's so much easier to open the papers and to look at the state of the world and despair. What does hope even mean when places like Ethiopia are going through such turmoil, or when Central America is hit by another hurricane? But I think that's kind of the point. Hope is not easy. We have to work for it. She hastens to make herself known in anticipation of their desire. Whoever watches for her at dawn shall not be disappointed. This is why the first group of virgins were so wise. They did the work necessary to endure that darkness. That light has been given freely to all people. Jesus is the light of the world. It's up to us, however, to cultivate that light in our hearts. Consider that wonderful image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, how it's burning so brightly. Now think about your own heart. Does it burn as brightly? Or even dimly? That's okay too. Does that light have enough fuel to last throughout the night, or is it just a flare-up to die down after it consumes all its oxygen? Okay, metaphors break down, but I think the point stands. How are we being vigilant with those gifts that we have been given? When the night seems the darkest and there is violence around the world, do we really believe those words from the Psalms that we just said a minute ago? My soul is thirsting for you, O Lord my God. Be vigilant. Trust in the Lord. Have hope.